think we'll go ahead and get started here. If anybody, I guess, yeah, let's get out some seating here. So, so just by raising hands, who's here for the first time tonight? All right, this is great. Lots of you. Welcome. Just to kind of outline the format. So Bleeding Edge Web, we usually do a short preview kind of what's happened in the industry, and then we'll dive into Ryan's talk here after that. And for those that are new, we haven't met in a couple of months. The meets usually fall on the 4th Wednesday of each month from 7 to 9, but the last couple of months we've had the holidays getting in the way. So we've been out of it for a little while. Kind of time for a fresh start here with the new year. And I'll dive into the bleeding edge side of things here, and then we'll get started into the main event. So first off, for those that don't know, I'm Corey Butler, and I'm the co-organizer of the group. Brian is actually off skiing tonight. Hi Brian, if you're out there watching. Tonight we're going to be talking about accelerating your development, deployment, and learning with Yeoman, which Ryan's going to be covering here in a little bit. And I'll let him introduce himself later, but your company is Vice Software, right?
Great.
ViceSoftware.com. So make sure to check that out. And we'll start with a thank you to Capital Factory. They give us this space every month. It's really awesome. And unfortunately, we don't have a food and drink sponsor this month. A lot of times we do, but it's just kind of didn't work out this month. So since many of you are new here, how many of you are looking for work at the moment by chance? Anybody? Just one, two? Okay. All right. Normally, we get a lot more than that. So this might not be the best group to ask right now, but we're contemplating another kind of mini group off of this called Bleeding Edge Web Work. Just talking about careers in the space where you can use bleeding edge web technology, or just at least more modern stuff. So that's something that it would follow the same kind of format. We'd probably meet quarterly instead of monthly, and it'll be at different locations around town. We've had a lot of people requesting, a lot of recruiters that have been reaching out to us lately, offering space, offering sponsorship, just to talk about the kinds of work that they have available and what they're looking for, and just kind of the industry as a whole. If this is of interest to anybody, let me know. Just send me a note on Meetup or Twitter or whatever. Or an email, just because I'm trying to gauge, interest here. And that goes for anybody that's watching on the live streaming as well. So that's kind of the housekeeping news. We'll start with the news from the bleeding edge. So first off, what we do is we'll talk a little bit about the browser news, what's new with Chrome, Firefox, that kind of stuff. Some of the W3 standards, anything new and interesting in the language and framework space. And of course, our emphasis is normally on JavaScript and Node, but we do a lot more than that. It was either last year or the year before, we had stuff on Google Glass. We've done home automation products. I think there's some wearables in there. So basically anything that we think is interesting. That's really what it boils down to. So we're going to start with the browser update, and a little pop quiz for those of you that have been here before. We do this every time. The last time we did an update was October 23rd. That was the last meet, and these were browser versions at this time. Does anybody want to take a guess at each of the versions here? You know where it's at currently? No?
Chrome's at 40.
Yep, that's right. Do you know Firefox?
35.
Keep going. No, I mean keep going. What's Opera at, you think?
Oh.
All right. Okay, that's normal. All right. So yeah, Chrome is at 40, and Firefox is at 35. Opera's at 27. Safari and IE, same changes as last time, 3 months ago. So I'll start off with Chrome version 39. Some of the more interesting things. The big one was really that now there's 64-bit support for OS X. There were several stability and performance updates. They paid out some more bounties. If anybody's unfamiliar with it, Chrome has a program where if you find bugs or fix issues, security flaws, that type of stuff, you're eligible for bounties. In version 39, they released just under $17,000 in bounties, which compared to last time, that's kind of chump change. They spent 75 grand for the last version, but that's just the cycle where they were at with version 39. The other big thing in version 39 were ES6 generators, which if you're here for Yeoman, then I assume you're here for Node as well. That's kind of a big thing at the moment, so to have that in the browser is also interesting. And then they've also introduced initial support for beacons. Beacons are a way of sending small bits of HTML data without really having to interact. You don't have to wait for page loads or stuff like that. So it's still brand new. It's not supporting everything. There is another browser that has that support, but it's just something to be aware of. It's really more, the use case that I've seen for it is more for notifications, just sending sometimes from the server, sometimes not. Oh, I gotta get this screen set up. All right, so then in version 40 of Chrome, that was mostly a security fix update. There were 62 security patches, and they paid out about $35,000 for that. The bigger features were the service workers. Is anybody familiar with service workers? Because it's pretty new. No? Okay. I'm not going to dive into it too much because it could be kind of its own talk, but in a nutshell, it will allow you to do a lot of stuff in the background in the browser. So if you've ever developed a Chrome app or something of that nature where it can run in the background, service workers kind of have a similar concept to that, except of course for your web pages. And then one of the features that I personally found kind of interesting was more in the Chrome dev tools, which were negative text filters. You can search, or you used to be able to filter on keywords that you wanted to find, and now by adding the minus sign in front of that, you can search for anything that doesn't have that keyword. So it's just another developer-friendly tool. As you can see, going through the network resources here, it can be easier to find your CSS files or your JavaScript files. So just negative text filters, that's all it really is. With Firefox, the last version we covered was 33. So in 34, there have been a couple of updates. The storage inspector has some new tooling around it. There's some performance tools. There's a couple of other things here that talk about frame switching. The one that I find interesting that kind of catches up to Chrome is the console.table support. And if you haven't used this before, in the developer console, you can type in console.table and reference an object, and it'll spit out a table format. So it's kind of a pretty version of a JSON object. So it's just a nice way to kind of visualize your data. And Chrome has had that for a little while now. Firefox now has that. They also have Jquery Events, which are visible in the page inspector. So it's a little bit more opinionated in this sense, just because it's leveraging jQuery. But if you're a jQuery person, then hopefully you'll find that useful. In version 35, there were a couple of new pseudo elements added into the page inspector. If you can't already see the trend here, lots of new stuff in the page inspector, so just more ways of diving into your code. CSS source maps are now enabled by default, and they have shadow DOM properties available in the page inspector as well. Which is anybody working with web components in here? No? Okay. So shadow DOM, I'm sorry, this is showing the DOM properties. I'm thinking a slide ahead here, which I'll just skip to that. Firefox will not support HTML imports, and since nobody in this room is using web components, that might not mean anything. But web components are kind of isolated bits of code. You can encapsulate HTML, CSS, JavaScript into an individual component, and it essentially looks like your own HTML tag. So if I wanted to have the query tag to spit my name out on the page, I could literally have, I'll just draw it up here, a tag like that. and it would display whatever content I wanted to display. So it's basically a way of kind of creating your own HTML tags. And so that's generated a lot of interest, but HTML imports and how they play in web components, that's how you actually include your code into the framework. So Google has their Polymer framework, Firefox has, or Mozilla has X tags, and being able to share and import code is normally, or it has been done so far to date with HTML imports, which have been natively implemented in Chrome. But Firefox has not done that, so it's kind of shaking things up a little bit. But that's not the only real news from Firefox since our last meet. Bigger news is the Firefox Developer Edition, a whole new browser, really dedicated to, it's built, built for developers by developers. And there are a lot of interesting features with the Developer Edition, so I strongly encourage you to go and check it out. The highlights in my mind were just what you can see on the main page. Basically, you can debug any browser with this, so you're not restricted to just Firefox. They talk about pixel perfect coding. It's really kind of a responsive design tool, I guess you could say. And then they have some global file constructors, which will actually allow you to write files out, which there are sometimes security issues with that, but this will give you the ability to do that.
Correct.
Yes.
The debug in any browser, is that version 2? So you could do like IE8 if you wanted to?
Well, I'm not sure if it goes back as far as IE8. I think it might be mostly the modern browsers or evergreen browsers, but
okay.
I honestly don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good question and worth looking up.
Is it a virtualization thing? So it's just like going into IE and then going, select backwards view?
I haven't played with it enough to be able to speak to that, so I really don't know the answer.
Okay.
Sorry. Opera is the next thing. There's really not a whole lot to say about Opera. It is 2 versions ahead from where we were last time. It's based on Chromium 39, so they have some of the same release notes that Chrome had from prior versions, the Beacon API generators, and 64-bit release for OS X. In version 27, they added service workers. Again, nothing really groundbreaking here. Safari, nothing new. And normally we have nothing new here for IE, but has anybody seen modern.ie? It's a web page. I'm sorry?
Spartan?
I honestly can't remember what the name is. It's more just the web page because they're trying to get more people involved in the development of IE, opening up a little bit, but if you go to the web page, I'll bring it up here real quick. More dev tooling, essentially, around IE. So if you do have to support IE at work or just for your product, this is supposed to be a new starting point for getting going with IE. And as you can see here, for those that can't see, there's virtual machines, browser screenshots, compatibility reporting, that type of stuff. A lot of the things that you might see in some other tools, like what is it, it's a browser stack. There are some other tools out there, and Microsoft is taking at least a little bit more initiative to reach out to the development community to get people's feedback on some of these tools and try to really generate a little bit more use of IE.
Someone just adding to browser news or whatnot. I don't know if you covered it before I walked in, but there's an Opera spinoff, Vivaldi.
Yeah, I heard about that. I haven't seen much though. Do you know much about it, or?
Beyond actually just what it looks like. I kind of grabbed it yesterday and had a very, very simple, clean lines to it, but I haven't really read into it. And for Windows 10, they're actually doing a slimmed down Spartan web browser, which sort of they're maybe not going to get rid of Internet Explorer just yet, but they're very new experience.
Yeah, and to that note, the modern IE website will actually launch, it'll allow you to launch a virtual machine with the Windows 10 preview in order to leverage that browser and test your code against it. I haven't played with it myself, but have you tried that? Or?
Nah, not yet.
Okay. Yes.
So you mentioned Beacon. I've never heard of it before. Is that kind of like a built-in slimmed down WebSockets?
Yeah, it's interesting. No, it's not like WebSockets. It's maybe at a functional level or transport level slightly because it's still operating over HTTP, but it's really just a separation of the logic in how the request that's being sent, or I'm sorry, the response that's being sent back to the browser. You don't have to wait on the DOM or anything. It's just a separation there. So does that answer your question?
Yes, that does.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. And I kind of flew through this. As I was going through this, putting this together, I realized there were just way more updates than I could possibly fit in here. So don't consider this to be comprehensive. It might not even be interesting to you. It was just stuff that I found interesting in my everyday work, which does lead into the W3 spec highlights. There have been a number of things, and I know every one of you is avidly watching the W3C website, just glued to the screen, reading specs, right? I know that's not what I like to spend my time doing, but there were a couple of highlights. The index database API has reached a recommendation point, which this is really already included in most of the browsers, but it's a, I'll read it for those that can't read or can't see it on the live streaming. It says, defines APIs for a database of records holding simple values and hierarchical objects, which are key value stores. The database maintains indexes over these over the records that it stores. And application developers can directly use the API to locate records either by key or by an index. And of course you can layer like query languages and stuff like that on top of this. But the fact that it has reached a recommendation state is more important than I think the functionality because it has been around for a while. So that's something to just be aware of. And the other one, you brought up WebSockets before. Server-side events, or SSE. These have been floating around for a little while now, and this is a proposed recommendation. It's basically a way to push data from your server back to the web app. So if you've done Socket.io or any other kind of WebSocket work, this is supposed to, it's not supposed to replace that because it is different, but it is yet another mechanism to be able to push to the web app from the server side. And so I've listed this as a possible alternative to WebSockets in some situations. It's really going to be based on your use case. Like if you're writing a chat app, you know what, this isn't the right thing, use WebSockets. But if you're just using notifications or something like that, this is another option for you. So that leads into languages, frameworks, and tools. So Node, the one we're all probably hearing a lot about. Excuse me. So the more important stuff, 0.10.36 is the most recent stable release. 0.11.15 is the most unstable release, so there weren't a whole lot of major changes in these. There was an update to OpenSSL and some V8 upgrades, some NPM updates as well, and a couple libuv updates. That all said, Node in general, there's a lot of changes going on. So kind of taking a look back at where we've come from in order to see where we're going to go. A lot of this stuff was actually taken from a Strong Loop article that was put out a little while ago, just kind of talking about some of the things that are happening with Node. Like Red Hat bought a company called FeedHenry, which is a Node-based platform. Apogee is pushing Node support in their platform. Oracle now has the Oracle Node Cloud Service. F5, which makes networking gear. They've included Node in their Big IP series. MuleSoft, which is another API company or API-centric company, introduced Osprey, which has a Node RAML implementation. So if anybody's doing API work and seeing RAML, it's a kind of a markup language, I guess, for APIs or for documenting your APIs more rather. And then Amazon Lambda shipped with that, or shipped with Node as its first platform. And then just some general stats. There have been a lot of maintenance releases, a lot of commits. NPM, this is the one, when I first started working with Node, there were only about a couple hundred NPM modules, and just hit 110,000 at this stage. Now, if those of you that are out there browsing through npmjs.org, you're going to see lots of duplications. So this number, take it with a grain of salt here. But more, I think the more important number is the fact. Come on. All right. More important fact is that we've really doubled the number of Node modules in the last year, which just indicates a lot of development, a lot of community hours spent. And then, of course, there's been a lot of usage of some of the major server frameworks like Connect and Happy, Loopback, Sales. They all doubled their download base. So things are out there in use at a lot of companies. Companies like Apple, NetLife, Zappos. And GE has even started using Node in some of their smart appliances. So, we're seeing Node everywhere. So what does the future look like for Node? That's slightly speculative, but one of the things that is here today, and really within the last couple of weeks, is io.js. Is there anybody in here that's not familiar with this, or just by a raise of hands, who has heard of io.js? Okay, so about maybe half. io.js is, according to them, it's an NPM-compatible platform originally based on Node. It's a fork. That's what it really is. It's a fork of the Node library. And the reason that this came about is there's been some controversy over the governance of Node, specifically with Joint being a commercial organization. So the people behind io.js started this as an open governance model, trying to get more of the community involved, really in an effort to expedite the development of Node. And today there was an article released called The State of io.js, which had a couple of interesting things. It was released on January 13th, so just a couple of weeks ago. There have been 4 major patch releases that have been downloaded over 400,000 times. So when you think about just 2 weeks worth of usage and the number of people that are starting to use this already, it's just kind of an interesting tidbit. There's more committers now with io.js than there are in Node. And it's still under heavy development. The third point here indicates that, and I don't know, this might not be very easy to see, but it says you can expect io.js to be marked stable in March. They're using semantic versioning, so you already see a 1.0 release or 1.01. I can't remember what it's at, but it's not considered stable. It's not following, it's not on parity with Node.js's versioning scheme. So they'll let you know when it becomes stable or when they consider it stable. But it is growing rapidly, and their biggest problem, according to this article, is that they've got a flood of contributors coming in now. And so really trying to manage that floodgate is the biggest challenge. They also, I'm just going to read this verbatim because it is a bit opinionated. It says, now io.js' biggest problem is keeping up with the flood of contributors coming in, participating in every facet of the project. io.js isn't just healthier than Node.js today, it's healthier than Node.js ever was, and it's only the beginning. So take that for what it's worth, but that's kind of the sentiment around the group that's running this. So that basically wraps up what I was going to cover here with a couple of final things, some events. The Space City JS folks reached out to me to remind us that there's going to be a conference in Houston on March 28th, and if you click on the link, and by the way, this is all available online, if you click on the link, it'll take you to their page, or I have some detailed information about that if you're interested, or if you're interested in it. And wow,
It's an elite group.
exactly. And then the only other thing is, if anybody is interested in seeing seeing a bleeding edge web work type meet, just let me know. I'd be interested. And I'll open up the floor. Does anybody else know of events coming up? Any interesting activities happening that they'd like to share? Okay. All right, so that was it for my part, and I'm going to turn it over to Ryan here. And thank you.
Sorry?
Oh, when you're done, I have a couple of administrators.
Okay.
What's the guest Wi-Fi password?
The factory.
The factory.
It's on the switch here.
Okay. All right. Well, hi everyone. Thanks for letting me talk. My name's Brian Weiss, and I'm a developer from here in Austin. And I've been playing with Yeoman quite a bit for, I guess, maybe about a year or 6 months or somewhere around there. And I think it's pretty cool. And I figured I'd try and find some people who want to hear a little bit about it. A little bit about my background. I have a small consulting company called Weiss Software. We specialize in basically tailored solutions, and we have a distributed team, so it offers a lot of cost advantages for our clients because we have some onshore, some local guys who are, I guess, more top tier kind of guys who kind of come in and help architect things, and then we have some more affordable guys who come in and crank through all the features and stuff like that. So it usually ends up being a good value proposition. I wrote a book that's entirely relevant to current development trends. Not really. WPF architecture patterns. But that was fun. It was a year and a half of weekends. And then I was awarded Microsoft MVP, also entirely relevant to this group.
MVP for what?
Connected systems. Yeah. And so, why are we here? Basically, this is the situation I think a lot of people find themselves in these days. More frameworks, more problems. I don't know if you're the kind of developer who gets excited about all the new toys to play with, or the kind of developer who's like, oh my god, I hate learning new stuff. I guess probably more from the excited group here. I probably work with a lot more from the other group. But what I found is it's very difficult to keep up even with the elevator pitch of all the frameworks that are out there, much less if you actually want to figure out how do I really use this? Like, how would I actually deploy something? How would I build it? How would I create an actual product and not just like a little task app that runs on my local machine? And so I found that Yeoman is very, very helpful. It's been that way for me to not have to kind of learn every little piece of a full value pipeline, a full continuous delivery pipeline in the modern web frameworks. So what I find is that it's great for ramping up on frameworks, like even just finding out what's out there. Almost every time something breaks, and I'm working on a small product myself, every time something breaks in my build or something like that, I find myself digging through the grunt files and discovering node packages and stuff like that that I've never heard of, and you go Google and you're like, oh, that's pretty cool. DevOps, I don't know if you love it or hate yourself, which one it is, but it can be very time consuming and difficult to do. I've been on projects where it took up quite a bit of the budget. So it's nice to have something that will scaffold the DevOps piece for you as well. Continuous deployment. You guys, anybody doing continuous deployment here? Everybody doing continuous deployment? Show hands. So if you haven't done it, or everybody know what it is or heard of it. So basically it's push of a button, you go all the way out to production, assuming you make it through the test. The environments I've worked in that have actually successfully done it, I think it's a huge value proposition. I think it's a really good thing to do, really hard to do right. And it's nice to kind of hit the ground with that all set up for yourself. And then quick starts, when you're trying to learn a framework, you'll find yourself going through the quick starts and setting these things up. But as I'm sure you've all seen, as soon as you try to do something real, it kind of breaks down and you get back into the situation of, do I name my folders around modules or features or whatever, all this kind of stuff. So that's it for the slides. I figured we'd just jump straight in and look at some code and things like that. So what I'm going to do is actually start off the install and then switch back and forth between the site, because the site has a lot of interesting information and sometimes the install might take a second. Has everybody used Node here? Anybody not used Node? Show of hands. Anybody? No? Okay. So only a few people. Everybody knows what Node is. NPM is the package manager. So if you want to install Yo, you just, or Yeoman, you just install Yo, and I'll do that globally.
You might need to mirror your screen.
Yeah, we can't see
Oh,
anything.
right. Yeah, that's not good. And let me move it over a little bit. So while that's cranking, let me go ahead and just pull up the So if you go to Yeoman's website, the main page basically is just marketing blurbs about the Yeoman technology. But if you go to the generator section, that's where it gets interesting. And so Yeoman is essentially a scaffolding framework. It allows for generating code, and because it allows for, because it's node-based, it allows you to generate a lot of things that Node does, which gets you into your DevOps pieces and things like that. And so what you can do is say that you want to check out React, or you're thinking about starting a React project. You can go and look and see what generators they have for React. And I actually was looking through this the other day, and I'd done a React project, but I hadn't done Webpack before, so I was curious about that. I'm sure a lot of y'all have heard of Webpack, but for those of you who haven't, when I was looking through this, I went and I researched it, and I was like, wow, this is pretty awesome. Show of hands for Webpack, have you guys heard of that? So Webpack essentially is, it's basically like a common JS style pattern where you can say include this script, include that script. And what it does is at build time, it will walk the tree for you and figure out what files need what based on what you're including. So you just include the top of the hierarchy, and then it will basically bundle your JS files into different packages which are appropriate for the different pieces you're going to pull down. So it's actually a really cool component. Like I said, I'd heard some guy talking about it at work, and I didn't really look into it, but then when I came here, I looked into it, and now I'm really interested in it. And with this particular technology, you should be able to just come in and run these 3 commands and have a fully working app by people who were so into it, they went out and created a generator and stuck it up on there and are going through the release cycles. So you would have some pretty good opinions about how to organize that stuff. So now my Yeoman's loaded here. And so the one I have the most experience with is this Angular full stack. So this Angular one is by the Yeoman team. I was interested in that one, couldn't get it to work, but it's probably my bet. So, and sometimes you have to bang on these guys to get them going, but I still find that it saves an absolute ton of time. So the Angular full stack guy here, what it does is it will create a mean stack for you, which will be Angular JS with Express on top of Node with Mongo on the back end. But it also supports a lot of other really cool things. It has Passport for authentication. It supports OAuth there, so you can have your Twitter, your Facebook, all of those kind of guys for logging in. It can support Socket.io for you, so you can have kind of the dynamic updates in multiple browsers and all that kind of stuff. It supports, you can use Sass, you can use Less, you can use, on your HTML, you can use Jade if you want. I actually, my little product that I've been working on, I actually did it in Jade. I'm probably going to go back and redo it not in Jade. I'm not saying anything negative about Jade, it's just nobody's using it. So if I have any hope of getting anybody on the project, it would probably be better to back that out. So if I want to install this guy, I can just come down here and find the 4 or so little commands that will do that.
Could you bump up your text size?
Oh, sure, sorry. Oh, wrong way. Okay. Is that good? Okay. So then I I actually made this command's pretty good, so we'll just do I'll make a new directory. I'll call it Bleeding Edge 2, because I've already done this once. I'll cd to that Bleeding Edge 2 directory, and then we'll just do a npm install, I believe it's generator and use a full stack. It's probably already in there. And so then that will pull down the generator for you. Once the generator comes down, then you can install it. So I'll throw this over here while this is running. So with this particular generator, in addition to being able to scaffold your application, once your application is scaffolded, you can go through and generate different pieces of the code that you want to use. So for example, for your API piece, you can just use this command line here, and that will create a /API/messages endpoint for you. And as it shows right here, it'll create an Index JS for you, a message Spec JS, which would be your test, message controller JS, model JS, and I'm assuming that's only if you're using the mean piece, and then a socket JS if you're using the socket piece, and then it'll wire all those things up for you. If you want to create a new page, you can just use route, specify what it is, and it'll create all the artifacts for you. Let me go ahead and, now that this guy's in there, we'll say yo Angular full stack, which is the generator we just installed, and we'll call this Bleeding Edge 2. That's all we need there. So then what it's going to do is ask you some questions. Do you want JavaScript or do you want CoffeeScript? I'm going to say I want to keep JavaScript on there, HTML or J. We'll go HTML. Here you can use Sass, Stylus, Less, CSS. Go Sass. UI router, of course. Would you like to include Bootstrap? Why not? Would you like to include UI Bootstrap? Sure. Would you like to use Mongo? Why not? Would you like to scaffold authentication using boilerplate? I'll do that. I'll just load up, take everyone else's users, use socket.io. And so now this guy's going to crank for a little while. Just a point in case I forget to mention it later, I am running Mongo over here, which if you do try this at home, you'll find that when you try and run it, you don't get the most obvious error that Mongo isn't running, but it won't run if you're not running Mongo. So then other interesting things that, you can create directives and all of the Angular stuff following the patterns that these guys think are good. And I've actually been following these guys for a while, and they have changed directions in some not so slight ways. Like they switched from doing the whole organizing by modules or features. They were previously doing it where you'd have the directives folder and the controllers folder and the service folder, and then they came to their senses and they switched over to saying, okay, actually I just want to have this feature, that feature, and the other feature. This is actually something in my current project that has been debated an ungodly amount about which way we should do that. They support OpenShift. Have you guys heard of that? Again, with the learning tool, it's great for discovering things. It's basically a host where you can push your application to, so it'll deploy directly to OpenShift if you specify you want OpenShift. It also supports Heroku. So basically what this allows you to do, which I'm going to try and demonstrate, but I might have to use one of my other apps because the distribution was breaking earlier when I was doing it, is once you generate your app, when you're ready to deploy it, you can actually just run grunt with no commands, and that will create your distribution folder. It does all the stuff you want to do. It runs all your unit tests, it runs your end-to-end tests, it will concatenate, minify, uglify, like take your images, make them smaller, all the stuff you want to do, get it set up and ready to go to be pushed out to the web. Then if you use Heroku, basically you use the Heroku command line tools along with the commands here. It'll push it to Heroku for you. And then once it's at Heroku, you use another command line, and boom, you're open, and you're live on the web. So once you've played with it for a little while, you can get a site up and out with like authentication and all this kind of stuff, you know, in about 30 minutes or so, which is, I think, a pretty cool feature. And like I said, it starts you out with a lot of the best practices and things like that. Trying to see if there's anything else interesting in here. So for this particular one, this is like their project structure and things like that. Any questions so far while this is cranking? Sure.
So this is pretty much to get you up and running as fast as humanly possible, right? That's the idea behind it.
Exactly, and like I said, the benefit that I find from it, this guy Tyler who does this one, he is so much more into this than I am. I do it as like professional. I get paid to do it. This guy just puts me to shame. And so he's just scrutinized and thought about like every single little detail, and they have a whole team of people who do that, and they constantly are like improving and coming up with better ways to organize code, better ways to test the code. Like in a minute, I'll show the grunt.js file. It's like really, I mean, maybe I haven't seen really good grunt.js files, but it looks really impressive to me. You know? There's all kinds of stuff in there that they do. So that's why I find that it's a great learning tool as well as a great way to get started. And what is this? It's just hopefully that won't stop us. I've seen you complain about that before for the other one I was installing. So while this is installing, So I have a backup copy in case this guy blows up. Is it because I didn't run it as an admin? No, I think I am an admin. So while this guy's clouding about, I'll just use one of these other ones I've already been playing with. This one looks like a lot more probable of success. So let's see if that worked. So now if this worked, I should be able to do a grunt serve is one of the commands. As show of hands, who's worked with grunt, who hasn't worked with grunt? Okay, so it's a good bit who hasn't. Grunt is basically like, you guys familiar with TeamCity? A lot of TeamCity. It's basically a way of scripting your build, essentially. And the way it works is that, okay, that's good. The way it works is essentially you define a lot of different tasks, and then when you run grunt, you can specify the task. So when you say grunt serve, if you go look in the grunt file, it'll say registered tasks serve, and you'll look under there and it'll have a bunch of steps that should be run when you serve. So basically what happened there is that there's an issue in the grunt. It's probably an environmental issue on my machine, but it's using this command to launch the browser that you have to specify Chrome by default. So I've already fixed that issue in the other version that I did of this. So I'll just switch over to that to save time. So we'll just go to Bleeding Edge Full Stack. And so if I do a grunt serve here, this is actually, I'm going to show you what it looks like out the box. What's it at? I have a demo link here somewhere. Well, okay. So they picked better colors than that. I was playing around with the CSS. So basically the grunt serve command will pop it up. So all the things it did there is it started Node.js for you. Then it launches your browser, points it at Node.js, and gets your Angular app running. So this is pretty much how it comes out of the box. And then it's got a lot of neat features. Like for example, right now, it's running with live reload. So if I open up WebStorm, for those of you who haven't heard of live reload, what it allows you to do is basically make changes to your files, and then the browser will immediately update when you save your file. You don't have to go and refresh your browser and all that kind of stuff. So I was coding during the day outside. That's why I got the light background. It's probably better for this anyway. Please go away. Not sure why WebStorm is freaking out on me. Let's just try that one more time. Oh, here we go. Okay. Okay, so it looks like WebStorm is finally awake. It's already at bleeding edge full stack. So let's just go ahead and take a look at what it created for us real quick. So you've got your server and your client. So the way they organize it is a lot of times you'll see app as the folder that uses the Angular and Node communities have both kind of gotten around. So they think that's a little confusing, so they've decided to use client for the front end and server for the back end. So again, I think that's a good approach, something that I learned when I used this particular generator. In the client piece, they're going to have all of the everything organized under this app folder, and then they're following, like I had mentioned, the convention of organizing things by features or modules or whatever you want to have the account, the admin, the main page, all of this kind of stuff. So then if we want to go ahead and take a look at maybe like the live reload type feature, we go to wherever the main HTML is. We should see over here. Scroll to the top, and let's just say hello, 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 and save that. See the browser refreshes and you get that. So probably saved you 30 minutes of setting that up, if you did it on your own. We could also go and say that we want to, which file was that? If we want to go to this guy here, and let's see. So it's using Sass. So if you're not familiar with that, that's going to be a higher level of CSS that basically compiles down into CSS and gives you support for variables and things like this. So with Sass, you have to have that compilation step. Hero unit, that's the guy I'm looking for. So if we find this guy right here, this hero unit. Oh, geez. Okay, so we'll find this right here in the main.sass and see, change it to medium purple, so we want to change it to blue. And then we save that. Should see it update. There it goes, boom. So you have your CSS or your Sass wired up to where it'll recompile it for you, do the live reload stuff for you. So then say, oh, another cool thing, I did the socket.io, right? So if we, so let's open another browser and we want to do, oh geez, not that. We want to take this guy over here as well and say we want to do some bleeding stuff. It doesn't sound too great, but as you can see, both browsers updated, so you've got your socket.io all wired up for you. So if you've never done that before, you get off to the races pretty quick with that piece of the technology stack. You can also, we can take a look at the database. So let's refresh this real quick. So you can see there's quite a few databases in there. We should be on the bleeding edge dev, I believe. And so if we come in here for our collections, we'll see that we've got on our users table, let's do a refresh real quick. So we've got 2 users. So let's go ahead and go to our app and say we want to sign up. We'll call it Bleeding Guys. The email will be bleeding@web.com. The password would just be 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh wait, actually I want to sign up. Okay, so now let's go ahead and refresh our database. And not be impressed. There we go. So apparently there's a little latency there. We see our new user gets created in our Mongo database for us. So that's all wired up. We can come in here and say that we want to let's create a new page real quick. So we'll go over to here and then look for my mouse to stop. So the worst thing, like one of my clients is Dell right now, so I have to represent, so to speak. The worst thing about a PC, in my opinion, is the trackpad. It drives me nuts. It's like I don't understand why no company out there can make a good trackpad for a PC. So then we'll say we want to create a new route. So for this right here, copy this command over. And so this is where I think you would get some real benefits. I don't know what your teams are like or whatever, but I find it's incredibly difficult to get the teams I work with to follow any kind of pattern consistently. Like everybody kind of just does their own thing. So maybe that's something that would be frustrating for you, or maybe it's not. But I would absolutely love something like this that would encourage people to all kind of follow the same pattern and keep things sane. So let's just call this the high edge or whatever route. So that's going to crank through there.
I don't know if you're in the right command window.
I think you might be right because it's still running in there. Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll just call it my route, whatever. Yes, we'll accept that, and you can override these values if you want. So now that that guy's in there, we can come over here and say /my route. And nope, I have to start the app first. Actually, I just did the build. I don't want to do the build. I want to serve it. Okay. And so we're back off to the races. And we can say my route now. You see that you have this guy here, and if we come back over to WebStorm, you should see under here, my route, you got all your artifacts created for you. I think this stuff is kind of awesome. It's I wish we were using it on my project. We're not though. Or one of my projects right now. We're about to start a new project. We'll probably use it on. So then another cool thing about this, which was something I didn't really know existed, I actually don't need WebStorm anymore. I feel like I should learn Sublime, not just because it's cooler, but because I don't really need the WebStorm stuff. Because when you work with this, you can debug in the browser for the, as everybody knows, with your F12. But it also wires up NodeMon, which before I started working with this, I had never heard of NodeMon. So if we say we want to debug our server, our node code, we could just say grunt server debug, I think it is. I think this is really cool. Have you guys seen NodeMon before? I'm sure probably a lot of you have. I seem to get really impressed by some of this stuff sometimes. Did that pop up? I may have hit the wrong command. Let me take a look at the manual real quick. Just look here, and rent and cheat. Should be server. Okay, so I can't remember what the secret handshake is for that one, but basically, if you give it the right input, it'll take you into Chrome developer-like experience for your node code. You can debug there. Then another one that I'll just show real quick is that if we go to my SQL code. If we get rid of my distribution folder here, that's this product I've been working on. We can Sorry?
If you go into your grunt file, your node run reference should be around line 197.
Okay, did you see what command is linked to? I thought it was server pull debug, but I don't know, it wasn't working for some reason. So now, what I'm gonna do here is just fire the grunt command. If I do that guy, if I had this deleted, you can see the stash cache gets created. It's running the test right here, front end and back end test, or end to end test. It's doing all the, you can see, doing your SAS, it's concatenating, minifying, cleaning, all this stuff. And then we get our distribution folder over here. Once we get our distribution folder, it's copying everything over there right now. Copied over 78 things, and so then we have our server. We come back up, we have our public. And now that all that's done, if we wanted to, we could basically just deploy it real quick with a couple more command lines.
Where's the distribution folder?
Sorry. It creates it right under, right here. So what I do when on my product, I have my git ignore the dist, and then the distribution, if you use Heroku, Ed uses Git itself, so it'll become its own Git repository. And basically with Heroku, you just check in your code and it deploys. I think that's how it works sometimes a little bit.
Okay, I found the dist folder.
Yeah.
See it. And it's the package JSON public and server. Okay.
Yeah. And so that's kind of the kind of gist of what you get out of it, in my opinion. And like I said, if you want to jump into a different stack than what you're currently in, and kind of check it out, I think it's a good way to take a lap around the pool. They've got Backbone, they've got Polymer, right? They've got I don't know, all kinds of stuff. So definitely been good for me. There's also, I haven't used it. Have you guys heard of Linman or Lineman? Let's see. There's another one called Linman or Lineman, which some friends of mine would tell me about it, which is a similar type product. But I would definitely, if you guys, it sounds like you guys are all into the cutting edge stuff, I would encourage you to get in there and play around with some other people's code and see what we find. Oh wait, let me show you this Grunt JS file real quick. And I'm sure some of you guys are probably looking at this and like, oh, that was my code 2 years ago. But for me, it was definitely better than what we're doing on my current project. So this guy here, they've got quite a bit of stuff going on in there. And basically they're registering, if you look down here, you can see the main task. They're registering your serve, your test, which will run all the tests. The server is the backend, build, all this kind of stuff. And if you dig through this guy, you'll find all kinds of neat stuff in here. Like he's using this thing called concurrent, which will run multiple tasks at one time. Up here at the top, I didn't know about this trick, but you can do basically this guy right here will scan in a lot of your Grunt external pieces and just make them available for you. Kind of saves you a little typing. I didn't actually know about that until I got in here. Like I said, just digging through this Grunt file, I learned a ton. So, and that's pretty much it. That's about where I'm at with this stuff. Any questions or?
So if you're using Grunt, or if you have Grunt installed and you're using Yeoman, what if you wanted to use Gulp? How would you get it to use Gulp over Grunt?
Right. So probably the easiest way would be just to look for the ones that use Gulp. So there's your Angular Gulp.
Okay.
And then you could do it in that way. What you might end up finding is that the one solution, like the one we were just looking at, I think is really well baked and have a lot of really good stuff in it. If you like all their stuff they're doing and they're not using Grunt, you might end up having to go in and convert your Grunt to a Gulp file. But that's basically that would basically be your options, you know. Corey?
I was just going to ask if you've used many other of the generators and work with them.
Shamefully, I haven't. I've tried playing with a few of them. I want to jump in on the Iconic or whatever.
Yeah, Ionic.
Ionic.
Yeah, I've been trying to install that one too.
Yeah, this one right here. I was trying to get some of the other ones running before this, it seems like with each one I try to do, you'll get tripped on a few things, and I have a feeling it probably has a lot to do with them running it on a PC. So it might be less painful for you guys who are fortunate enough to be working with Macs. So there's a little bit of debug time involved in it. So I was trying to get through some of the other ones before the talk, but I ended up deciding it would be better just to make sure I could get through all the things I wanted to demo. But they definitely have a lot of good ones in there represented.
So quick question, going back to the grunt versus gulp. This is slightly off topic, but I'm not sure if you have a professional opinion of whether to use gulp versus grunt.
Yeah, so I know why we used gulp over grunt on one of the previous projects I worked on, which was basically that it's supposed to be faster because of the stream support. But that's the only argument I've heard. Most of the other projects I've worked on have used grunt, I think just because it's kind of like the same reason people use Angular, it's just the popular one or whatever.
So I've heard that grunt is actually harder to configure and use than gulp.
Yeah, I've heard that gulp's a little bit easier on the configurations, but I haven't set up the gulp stuff before. I've worked with another guy set it up and I worked with it on a project, and his argument was that the streams and then the better usability.
Okay.
Does anybody else work with both of them?
Yeah, I think it's really a matter of preference at some point, because grunt, there's a bit more configuration involved in it, whereas if you're used to things like Express middleware, that type of stuff, gulp is going to have more of that type of feel to the process, but at the end of the day, they do the same thing.
Gotcha.
Yeah, you probably get more street cred for using gulp, but you care about that.
So you only use Yeoman at the very beginning of the project.
Well, it depends on the generator, right?
Okay.
Like if I was using the Angular full stack one, I would probably use it throughout to set up my routes and my directives.
Okay, yeah.
Because you save on all that boilerplate of, because that's one of the pain points for me with Angular right now is just creating like the IFE and putting the directive thing in, and kind of doing all that kind of boilerplate code before you get to the real deal.
And what if they go back and redo the original generator and make improvements? Is there a way to bring those in? You'd just have to start over, wouldn't you?
You kind of have to start over or stick with the same version or migrate your code to that flavor or whatever. That's kind of where I'm at right now. This product thing I've been working on is really more just an excuse to kind of play with newer technologies. And so it gets backburnered real quick when I get a lot of projects and stuff. And so I hadn't touched it in a while, and I went back and I saw the new generator. I was like, oh, I'm gonna rewrite it, So, but that's kind of what it's for. But for your actual production application, you would probably want to spend a little time making sure that you like the flavor that you've got, so that if they do make those kind of changes, because like I said, the full stack, it used to the folder structure and everything was completely different. So it would be really hard to have the older one and the new one.
So to follow on to that, I saw you were doing a lot of local installs of your generators. Can you do local installs and manage it that way and save them as dev dependencies?
Yeah. You can do that.
Okay.
Do you have any experience creating a generator?
No, I haven't done that.
So these generators aren't curated in any way, right? So the interface, for example, creating routes, isn't going to be accessible across multiple.
No, it's not standardized or anything like that. It's just wild west, and that's kind of the good and the bad of it. Like the good is that you really can get in there and get like some cutting edge opinionated stuff, because people aren't having to get locked into certain ways. And some of them, not all of them, do a full continuous delivery solution. Some of them do a lot less and stuff like that. So, yeah. Any other questions or comments?
Just to touch on what he said about creating generators, if you click on their page, I've actually been going through this a lot recently myself. The third link up there, it's actually pretty straightforward to create your own generator. Like when you look at the code, it can be a little bit, intimidating at first, but ultimately it's pretty well structured, and there's actually a generator to generate generators. So it's a good starting point, but ultimately, as Ryan was showing you with the questions that get asked, it's based off of a library called Inquirer.js, which is really about the command line wizard actions that you see there. And once you get used to that, it's pretty straightforward to create your own simple generators. I created one that it'll build my own API scaffolding with a lot of authentication and services that I use, and it's extremely opinionated. So it's not something I would ever release publicly, but it's great for, as Ryan was saying, the standardization aspect, because you put in whatever you want, and when you change it, you just let your dev team know, or you can build in your own updates, or those kinds of things.
So there's this one that I saw today. Hold on. One of the words you just said made me think about this. Oh man, have you guys seen the is library? Oh dang it! This guy showed me this library today. Let's see, so cool. Is JS. I don't know where it's at. It's this library called is, which basically is just like this fluent interface in JavaScript that allows you to just say is tablet, is Chrome, but it does all kinds of stuff like is email address, is phone number, is. So I thought that was a pretty cool little guy. I know there's 10 billion micro libraries out there. But anyway, so I'm assuming that's about it. That's pretty much all I had for that one. So thanks for letting me share.
We usually kind of wrap this up by heading over to Buffalo Billiards, grabbing a drink, just kind of doing the social thing. So feel free to pop down there. I know I will. Are you planning to come down? So feel free to join us. But thanks for coming out, and welcome again to everybody that's brand new to the group, and hope to see you again next month. Oh, I forgot. Anybody? I had a couple of quick announcements. I promised some people I would mention this. Several people looking for employees. So if you're, sorry to harp on this, but if you're looking for work, or if you know somebody looking for work, Volusion, which is based up north, they're looking for several people.
Damn scooters.
GE got in touch with me today. They're looking for a UI architect lead and a senior UI developer. Also know there's a couple, actually one startup in particular is looking for some people that have experience with the Square API. That one I think might be a contract or moonlight type opportunity. And then my company is also looking for people. I'm looking for front-end developers and for Node people at this point. And finally, if anybody's looking for open source projects to get involved with, I've had a lot of people talking to me about that as well. And I'm also looking for people that are interested in Go, specifically for the project we were talking about before. So that's it from.
What did you say about Go?
About Go. So I wrote a little module called NVM for Windows. It's just the Node version manager, and it was written in Go. I'm new to Go, and I've got a lot of projects out there. I'm kind of a little bit inundated with work at the moment. So a couple of things that I'd like to have added on. I'm looking for contributors. So I know a couple of other folks that are looking for contributors for JavaScript libraries as well. So feel free to get in touch if any of that stuff sounds of interest to you. So, and that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick.